Hey guys, so we're starting our new unit this week on statistics. Hopefully everyone got a chance to relax a little bit over spring break or get caught up with the old stuff if you still needed to. I know we've been telling you guys that there's going to be a different schedule, so we're only posting assignments on Tuesdays and Thursdays and Fridays for math. So your assignment for today is going to be to watch this video, and then there's just two really quick questions that you're going to have on a Google Doc after it. And then you'll get another assignment on Thursday that's a Google form, and all that stuff will be due on Sunday. You're not going to have a new assignment on Friday. So I'm going to go ahead and go through this PowerPoint with you guys about statistics. Okay.
So in high school, I never even heard of statistics. And I knew I liked math, and I knew I liked science.
In high school, I went to a conservatory for music. I was a viola performance major.
When I started college, I was taking a bunch of math and economics classes. And then in my junior year, I took a probability and statistics class.
I remember sitting there in the classroom thinking, wow, this is a really interesting problem, and he's using statistics and probability theory to try to solve it.
Statistics is amazing because it has many diverse applications, from search results on Google or Bing to recommendations on what you should be shopping for on Amazon.
If you're watching a YouTube video, and at the end you get recommendations for other videos, statistics were used to give you those recommendations.
I've seen statistics in ice skating. I've seen statistics in agriculture. I've seen statistics in climate control. Statistics can actually be anything that you like, anything that you enjoy, anything that you want to do, anything that you're passionate about. You can, take statistics and it fits.
I'm very lucky to get to use statistics to answer some of the questions that I think are the most important questions about social justice and human rights violations. And on my best days, I get to spend the majority of my day doing data analysis to answer questions for the United Nations, to contribute evidence to war crimes trials.
As a part of my PhD, I created a statistical software package, and Google emails me every time someone uses it. And people have used it to analyze DNA and find genes that are related to cancer.
It's even used in the food pyramid. You know what I mean? When we come up with suggestions, of what you should eat and how much of it you should eat, we try those things using statistics.
Statistics is critical for everybody entering the workforce because so much of industry and government and everything today is data-driven.
Just like it's important that we all know how to read, we all need to know statistics.
Look around you. Everywhere you are, there's data, there's information.
Whatever your passions are, statistics will be involved.
We're producing so much data these days. Regardless of the field that you pursue, whether it is astronomy, criminal justice, or medicine, going forward, you've got to know statistics.
Okay, so hopefully you actually take the time to watch these videos. I know a lot of you guys like to ask oh, when am I going to use this in real life? And there's a lot of stuff in Algebra 2 that you're not going to use in real life, but this is something that is going to be relevant to a lot of you guys, and you see statistics every day. So I'm just going to kind of go through a few reasons why statistics are important. These are some places you might see statistics in your everyday life. So anytime you look at the weather, the people who are predicting it have to use statistics and models in order to predict the weather. And we use it a lot to prepare for emergencies. So we need to know like what are the chances of a natural disaster occurring so that we can be prepared for that. Another thing that you guys are really familiar with right now is we do use statistics to predict diseases. And this can help, kind of like this says, if you only know the number of people who have the disease or who have died from it, that might not give you enough information. But if you look at like the second chart here, if you have more specific information, you could know how much more likely it is that it would affect you personally. So I put two kinds. The one on the top is just like the number of people who have contracted the virus, and then on the bottom, it goes through different pre-existing conditions so that people who have those conditions would know that they're more likely to get it and they can take more measures to be safe. Whenever there's a new drug or vaccine, doctors are using statistics to see if it's effective. And also with genetics, which if you have taken biology, you've done the little Punnett squares. So that's also using statistics to predict what are the chances of a baby being born with a certain disease if you know enough information about both parents. There's also political campaigns. So obviously people working for different candidates want to know how likely it is that their candidate can win. So they do a lot of polls and other ways of collecting data and information to try to determine what candidate people like more and how they could get those people to vote for their candidate instead. And same thing with insurance or mortgages on your house. The rate that the insurance company charges you is based on statistics from all drivers or homeowners in your area. So if you're a 17-year-old male trying to get car insurance, the insurance company knows that there are more accidents in certain demographics, so you might have to pay more for your insurance. And then when you get older and it's more likely that you'll be a safe driver, then your cost can go down. We know like huge companies like Amazon or Walmart keep track of everything they sell and use statistics to calculate what to ship to each store and when. So those companies weren't prepared for what's going to happen right now because statistically people don't purchase, for example, as many Lysol wipes or as much toilet paper as they have been currently. So their models didn't predict the increase that we had. Which is why there's been things that we're running out of. But normally we don't run out of those things because stores know exactly how much they need to keep in stock. And then anytime a new product is made, the company needs to make sure that the product is a good quality. But they're not going to test each and every item that they ship to you as the customer. So the company uses statistics to test a few sample items of what they make. And then if the sample passes quality tests, then the company can assume that since they made all of the other items the same way, that they would be good as well. But there are some times when that doesn't work and you would need to return something. And then another thing super relevant to you and what's going on right now is the stock market. So stock analysts use statistical computer models to forecast what's going to happen in the economy, which again, things like the coronavirus can take people by surprise and can affect the market in a way that we weren't prepared for because we aren't going to predict every single situation. All right, so I'm going to show you two YouTube videos. Here's the first one.
Hi, I'm Adrienne Hill, and this is Crash Course Statistics. Welcome to a world of probabilities, paradoxes, and p-values. There will be games and thought experiments and coin flipping. A lot of coin flipping. Statisticians love to talk about coin flipping. By the time we finish the course, you'll know why we use statistics and how, and what questions you ought to be asking when you run across statistics in the world, which is all the time. Statistics can help you make a guess whether or not you're going to be accepted to Harvard. Marketers use them to sell us gold lame pants. Netflix uses stats to predict what show we might want to watch next. You use statistics when you look at the weather forecast and decide what to wear, dress or jeans. Policymakers use them to decide whether or not to invest in more early childhood education, whether or not to spend more on mental health services. Statistics is all about making sense of data and figuring out how to put that information to use. Today, we're going to answer the question, what is statistics? The legend says that during a late 1920s English tea at Cambridge, a woman claimed that a cup of tea with milk added last tasted different than the tea where the milk was added first. The brilliant minds of the day immediately began to think of ways to test her claim. They organized 8 cups of tea in all sorts of patterns to see if she really could tell the difference between the milk first and the tea first cups. But even after they had seen her guesses, how could they really decide? Because she'd get about half the cups right just by randomly guessing either milk first or tea first, and even if she really could tell the difference, it's completely possible that she would miss a cup or two. So how could you tell if this woman was actually a tea savant? What's the line between lucky tea guesser and tea super taster? As fate would have it, future super statistician and part-time potato scientist Ronald A. Fisher was in attendance. During his lifetime, Fisher began work that set the stage for a large portion of statistics, which is the focus of this series. These statistics can help us make decisions in uncertain situations, tea taste tests and beyond. Fisher's insights into experimental design helped turn statistics into its own scientific discipline. And although Fisher didn't publish results of the tea test, the story has it the woman sorted all the teacups correctly. Just in case you were curious. At this point, it's worth mentioning that there are 2 related but separate meanings of the word statistics. We can refer to the field of statistics, which is the study and practice of collecting and analyzing data, and we can talk about statistics as in facts about or summaries of data. To answer the question, what is statistics, we should first ask the question, what can statistics do? Let's say you wake up at your desk after a long evening studying for finals with a cheeseburger wrapper stuck to your face. And you wonder, why do I eat this stuff? Is fast food controlling my life? But then you tell yourself, no, it's just super convenient. But you're worried. You're thinking about how great it is that McDonald's serves breakfast all day right now. But maybe that's normal, right? I mean, finals are this week, so you Google the question, fast food consumption, and you find the results of a fast food survey. The first thing you might do is start asking questions that interest you. For example, you could ask, why do people eat fast food? Do people eat more fast food on the weekend than on weekdays? Does eating fast food stress me out? Now that we have some interesting questions, we need to ask ourselves an even more important one. Can questions like these be answered by statistics? Like I mentioned earlier, statistics are tools for us to use, but they can't do all the heavy lifting. To answer the question about why people eat fast food, you can ask them to fill out a questionnaire. But you can't know whether their answers truly represent what they're thinking. Maybe they answer dishonestly because they don't want to admit that they scarf McDonald's because they're too tired to cook dinner, or because they're ashamed to admit they think Del Taco is delicious, or because none of the given answers represented their reasons, or they may not really know why they eat fast food. Armed with the results of the survey, you could tell that the most common reason that people reported eating fast food was convenience, or that the average number of meals they eat out in a week is 5. But you're not truly measuring why people eat so much fast food. You're measuring what we call a proxy, something that is related to what we want to measure, but isn't exactly what we want to measure. To answer whether people eat more fast food on the weekends, or whether eating it more than twice a week increases stress, we'd not only need to know how much people are eating fast food, which our questionnaire asked, but also which days they eat it. And we'd need an additional measure of stress. You can use statistics to give a good answer about whether you're going through the drive-thru more on the weekend, But even the question of whether eating fast food is associated with higher levels of stress is hard to answer directly. What is stress, and how can we measure it? And are people eating fast food because they're stressed, or does eating all those calories make them stressed? It's often the case that some of the most interesting questions are the ones that can't be answered by statistics, like why people eat fast food. Instead, we find questions that we can answer, like whether people who eat fast food often work more than 80 hours a week. The tools we use to answer these questions are statistics plural, and there are two main types, descriptive and inferential. Descriptive statistics describe what the data show. Descriptive statistics usually include things like where the middle of the data is, what statisticians call measures of central tendency, and measures of how spread out the data are. They take huge amounts of information that may not make much intuitive sense to us and compress and summarize them to hopefully give us more useful information. Let's go to the thought bubble. You've been working for 2 years in a local waffle factory. Day in and day out, you create the golden browniest, tastiest frozen waffles ever created. The holes are perfectly spaced, screaming for syrup. And now you want a raise. You deserve a raise. No one can make a waffle as well as you can. But how much do you ask for? An extra $1,000? An extra $5,000? You know you're valuable, but have no idea what other waffle makers get paid. So you dig around online and find there's an entire subreddit devoted to waffle makers. And someone, username Waffle Leaks, has posted a spreadsheet of waffle makers' salaries. Now, with a quick glance at this huge list of numbers, you can see whether the woman who works at a similar job at the rival frozen waffle company makes more than you. You can see how much more you're making than the new guy, who's just now learning to mix batter. But you still don't know much about the paychecks of your waffle company as a whole, or the industry, because it turns out there are thousands of waffle makers out there, and all you see is a list with data points, not patterns that can help you learn more about how much you might be able to convince the boss to pay you. Here is where descriptive statistics come in. You could calculate the average salary at your company, as well as how spread out everyone's salaries are around that average. You'd be able to see whether the CEO's paychecks are relatively close to the entry-level batter makers, or incredibly far away, and how your salary compares to both of their salaries. You could calculate the average salary of everyone in the industry with your job title and see the high and low end of that pay. And then, armed with those descriptive statistics, you could confidently walk into the waffle boss's office and demand to be paid for your talents. Thanks, Thought Bubble. While descriptive statistics can be great, they only tell us the basics. Inferential statistics allows us to make inferences. Clever namers, those statisticians. Inferential statistics allow us to make conclusions that extend beyond the data we have in hand. Imagine you have a candy barrel full of saltwater taffy. Some pink, some white, some yellow. If you wanted to know how many of each color you have, you could count them, one by one by one. That'd give you a set of descriptive statistics. But who has time for all that candy counting? Or you could grab a giant handful of taffy and count just those you've pulled out, which would be using descriptive statistics. If your candy was, in fact, mixed pretty evenly throughout the barrel and you got a big enough handful, you could use inferential statistics on that sample to estimate the content of the entire taffy stash. We ask inferential statistics to do all sorts of much more complicated work for us. Inferential statistics lets us test an idea or hypothesis, like answering whether people in the US under the age of 30 eat more fast food than people over 30. We don't survey every person to answer that question. Let's say someone tells you that their new brain vitamin, SmartyVite, improves your IQ. Do you rush out and buy it? What if they told you that the average IQ increase for Group A, 20 people who took SmartyVite for a month, was 2 IQ points, and the average IQ increase for Group B, 20 people who took nothing, was 1 IQ point? How about now? Still not sure? It's a pretty small difference, right? Inferential statistics give you the ability to test how likely it is that the two populations we sampled actually have different IQ increases. However, it's up to you as an individual to decide whether that's convincing or not. And don't be alarmed if the bar you set isn't the same in every situation. It's entirely okay to have different standards for the questions, does my cat like Fancy Feast more than Meow Mix, versus does this drug cure lung cancer? It might take more evidence to convince you to take a new, supposedly cancer-curing drug than to switch cat food brands. It should take more evidence to convince you to take a new, supposedly cancer-curing drug than to switch cat food brands. With inferential tests, there will always be some degree of uncertainty, since it can only tell you how likely something is or is not. Your job is to take that information and use it to make a decision despite that uncertainty. If statistics were a superhero, its bat call would be uncertainty, and its tagline would be, "When you don't know for sure, but doing nothing isn't an option." Statistics are tools. Statistics help us make sense of the vast amount of information in the world. Just like our eyes and ears filter out unnecessary stimuli just to give us the best, most useful stuff, statistics help us filter the loads of data that come at us every day. Descriptive statistics make the data we get more digestible, even though we lose information about individual data points. Inferential statistics can help us make decisions about data when there's uncertainty, like whether Smarty Bite will actually increase your IQ. But statistics can't do all the work. They're here to help us reason, not to reason for us. They can help us see through uncertainty, but they don't get rid of that uncertainty. To push our tool analogy a step further, statistics like chainsaws are pretty useless, even dangerous, without understanding how they work. We need to know how to use them and how not to use them. As we'll see in later episodes, statistics done poorly can lead us to some pretty silly conclusions, and chainsawing done poorly leads to about 36,000 injuries in the US each year, 81% of which are lacerations. Did you know that almost no one dies because of chainsaw injuries? Once in a while, but it's very rare. 95% of the people who are hurt by chainsaws are male. This does not necessarily tell us that males are significantly worse chainsawers. Statistics can help us plan a vacation to Bali in December. They can help us optimize our chances of winning our fantasy football league. They can help us budget our meal card at college. Statistics can help us decide whether that additional insurance the guy at Best Buy is trying to sell us on our new blender is actually worth it. Statistics can also help us decide whether or not to go ahead with an invasive heart surgery. Statistics can help NGOs optimize the amount of food aid they send to refugee camps. They can help policymakers decide if they should spend more or less money on helping students pay back their school loans, and can help you decide how much money you should be comfortable borrowing for college in the first place. There's a lot statistics can help us with, but some things statistics can't do. Thinking statistically means knowing the difference. So when your brother says he used statistics to prove that your mom loves him more, you can rest easy, knowing the only question he answered is whether she gives him slightly more ice cream each night. And you've got data suggesting she gives you extra sprinkles. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Crash Course Statistics is filmed in the Chad and Stacy Imigholt studio in Indianapolis, Indiana, and it's made with...
All right, and there's one more.
Hi, I'm Adrienne Hill. This is Crash Course Statistics. In the last video, we talked about why we care about statistics, how we use statistics, and statistics is math. So we thought we'd take a detour today from the traditional curriculum to talk about how to think about numbers, really, really big numbers, really, really small numbers, and how to make sense of them. We're also going to talk about mathematical thinking and fighter jets. Chances are, if you're watching this channel, and certainly if you're commenting below, you're literate. You understand language and how to use it. But are you equally comfortable with numbers? And I'm not talking here about being able to calculate square roots in your head, or instantly tell whether or not 17,321 is prime or not. And it is. I looked it up. Numeracy is about being able to wrap your head around what it means when politicians talk about a $1.5 trillion budget hole. It's about getting a handle on how much you should really lose sleep over the chance of an Ebola outbreak, and how to compare that risk to the chance of being killed by a terrorist, or a snake bite, or dying from an opioid overdose. And it's about what those comparisons might tell us about the time and resources we spend trying to address those problems. Mathematical thinking is about seeing the world in a different way, which means sometimes seeing beyond our intuition or gut feeling, because it turns out most of our guts are good at digesting food and pretty bad at math. Infants, less than a year old, can discern between 3 objects: I am much more advanced than an infant and can pretty easily comprehend the difference in 1 and 100, even the difference between 100 and 1,000, or maybe even 10,000. For most of us, once numbers get really big, we lose our ability to have any intuitive sense of them. The distinction between a million and a billion and a trillion is really hard to visualize. There are 100 trillion bacteria in each of our bodies in non-mathematical guts. 100 trillion! There are an estimated 10 quintillion insects that are alive right now, and an estimated 300 sextillion stars in the universe. So how do you even begin to think about those big numbers and what they mean? Let's go to the thought bubble. Take a minute to visualize the difference between 1 and 100, and 1,000, and 100,000, and a million. That's a lot of dots, a whole lot of dots. There are other good ways to try to make sense of big numbers. You can try to put the number in context. The US debt is in the neighborhood of $20 trillion. About 323 million people live in the US. So the debt owed for each person is about $62,500. You can also turn a big number into a unit of measurement that you're more comfortable with. The Kola Super Deep Borehole, which is the deepest artificial point on Earth, is 40,230 feet deep. I have no idea how deep that is, until you tell me that it's about 7.5 miles down, and I can start to picture it. You can also have reference points for big numbers ready to go. There are about 100,000 words in a 400-page novel. About 46,000 people show up to Dodgers games in Los Angeles. I can roughly visualize that. 1 million people taking to the streets to protest might be easier to think of as 21 Dodger stadiums worth of people, or 14.5 crowds for a Real Madrid match. Time can help us go even bigger. 1 million seconds is a little less than 12 days. But what about 1 billion seconds? Do you think you are 1 billion seconds old? Well, are you older than 32? It takes 32 years for 1 billion seconds to pass. And what about 1 trillion seconds? Think you or I will be alive after 1 trillion seconds passes? Sorry to break it to you, but no. We will not. Even if you are destined to be the Guinness Book of World Records oldest woman, there is 100% chance, barring massive medical breakthroughs, that you will be dead. It takes 32,000 years for 1 trillion seconds to tick by. Thanks, Thought Bubble. A quick note about scientific notation. Scientific notation can be really helpful for calculating with big numbers, but not necessarily helpful for understanding them. Without context, exponents can be non-intuitive, if that's a word, in their own way. 10 to the 39th and 10 to the 32nd sound like they might be close, but 10 to the 39th is 10 million times larger than 10 to the 32nd. We're not going to run the dots on that one. There are about 7.6 billion people on Earth. 7.6 billion. Understanding the sheer number of people out there in the world can help us make sense of the commonness of coincidences or improbable events. Some statisticians call it the law of truly large numbers. The idea here is that with a large enough group or sample, unlikely things are completely likely to happen. Consider this example from statistician David Hand. On September 6, 2009, the Bulgarian lottery randomly selected as the winning numbers 4, 15, 23, 24, 35, and 42. And then, 4 days later, on September 10th, the Bulgarian lottery randomly selected new winning numbers. 4, 15, 23, 24, 35, and 42. Exactly the same numbers. People freaked out. Bulgaria's sports minister ordered an investigation. Was it fraud? Something else? Hand says calm down. It's just coincidence. He lays out the math to prove it, but part of the argument here is the law of truly large numbers. If you consider the number of lotto drawings every week around the world over years and years, it would be amazing, he wrote, if draws did not occasionally repeat. Speaking of those incredibly unlikely things, we need to talk about the flip side of incredibly big numbers, the incredibly small numbers that can also be hard to comprehend. Take the likelihood of winning a Mega Millions jackpot in the US. Right now it's about 1 in 302.6 million. The probability that you'd win the jackpot is 0.00000003305. Let's put the teeny tiny chance of that happening in some perspective. 302.6 million is the number of seconds in more than 9.5 years. So to borrow here from a very funny post by Tim Urban on Wait But Why, that's like knowing that a hedgehog will sneeze once in the next 9.5 years and betting on the exact second during those 9.5 years that the hedgehog will need a tissue. And I'm going with May 2nd, 2:23 and 33 seconds p.m., 2021. Our inability to judge small numbers does more than just cause us to misjudge our chances of winning the lottery. It causes us to worry about the wrong things, to fear the wrong things. Take your chance of dying from Ebola. If you live in the US, the chance that you'll be killed by Ebola in any given year is pretty close to your chance of winning the Mega Millions lottery, 1 in 309.6 million. It is among the very, very least likely ways anybody living in the US will die in a year. Though you are, by some accounts, less likely to be killed by a terrorist attack in the US committed by a refugee. In a 2016 study, researchers calculated that as a 1 in 3.64 billion chance in the US in a given year. And you're far more likely to die in dozens of other ways. There's a 1 in 6 million chance someone living in the US will be killed in a given year by a bee sting. A 1 in 708,000 chance they'll die falling from a ladder. A 1 in 538 chance they'll die in a given year from cancer. And not a big cause of death, but did you know that people die in sand holes that they or their friends have dug out at the beach? They crawl in, looking for a little time in a sand hole, and whoosh, the hole suddenly collapses and they're buried. Stay out of sand holes. I'm going to stop because it's stressing me out. The point here is that it's worth taking the time to think through small numbers because they can help you figure out what's actually worth worrying about and what isn't, what you might want to act on, and what you might want society to take more and less seriously. My personal takeaway is that I'd be way better off spending more time exercising and less time looking around obsessively for poisonous snakes because the annual odds of dying from a snake bite in the US are only about 1 in 34 million, but the odds of dying from heart disease in any given year are 1 in 534. Thinking mathematically isn't just about understanding numbers better. It's about asking important questions about the world around us and letting numbers illuminate those questions. One of my favorite examples of mathematical thinking is the story of Abraham Wald and the missing bullet holes. Hat tip here to mathematician Jordan Ellenberg for highlighting the story. Let's go to the news desk. World War II, Manhattan. A group of statisticians and mathematicians are hard at work trying to protect American fighter pilots. Their task, trying to figure out how best to armor planes without making them too heavy, so our heroes can outrun and outwit the enemy. In an effort to figure out how best to protect our planes, the statisticians pore over data of the planes that return from fighting, looking at where they took damage, where the bullet holes were. That data showed there were more bullet holes in the fuselage and fuel system, and not as many in the engines. So how do we save our American heroes? The exceptional statistician Abraham Wald studied the data and came back with advice that surprised everyone: to put the armor where the bullet holes weren't, over the engines. Wald realized the bullet holes should have been more evenly distributed over the planes. If fewer planes were returning with holes in the engines, that meant those planes weren't returning home. Wald had the exceptional realization the data wasn't a random sample of all planes. It only represented the planes that returned. He suggested the military add armor to the engines. American lives were saved. Not all mathematical thinking is going to help you save lives, but it will help you make better decisions. Mathematical thinking can help you see past coincidence. It can help you judge risks. It can help you see the broader relationships in the world. Thinking mathematically gives us something to go on other than our guts and their trillions of bacteria. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again next time. Crash Course Statistics is filmed in the Chad and Stacy Emigholz studio in...
Okay, so these are your these are your assignments for the week. So all you're going to do for today is just do a Google Doc with 2 quick questions, and then by Thursday we'll post a Google form, and you can turn both of those things in up until Sunday night. All right. Email us if you need anything, and office hours this week are Tuesday and Thursday from 10:30 to 11:30.